Libra, God gave you the hardest test of all, and you passed it the right way. You think you already know what the hardest test you've ever faced was. But what if it was never that obvious moment everyone saw, but rather the hundreds of invisible instants when you chose not to break down, without anyone realizing there was a choice there? They called her ability to handle everything diplomacy, lightness. No one asked how much it cost. You will understand why this silent strength was never accidental, and why she has already passed the most difficult test of all, precisely by the right path. No one ever asked you how much weight you were carrying while smiling. Notice that. Libra has always been described as the sign of harmony, lightness, and easy diplomacy, as if the peace you maintain around people costs nothing, as if it were natural, automatic, effortless. But what if all that calmness was never the absence of weight? What if it was always proof that you learned too early to carry things that no one else wanted to carry, without showing how heavy it was? There's an engineering process behind a suspension bridge that most people never stop to observe. It doesn't stand still. It's constantly moving, making invisible micro-adjustments, distributing the force of the wind, traffic, and the structure's own weight, so that nothing collapses all at once. From the outside, it looks like just an elegant line cutting across the horizon. Inside, it's an entire system working non-stop to keep that elegance standing. You are that bridge, and nobody ever told you that. From an early age, you learned to sense tension before it turned into conflict. Before the argument exploded, you had already calculated almost unconsciously who needed to hear what could be said, and what needed to be kept quiet just a little longer. This is not weakness. This is a load distribution system working in real time within you, absorbing what others couldn't absorb on their own. The problem is that load distribution systems also have limits, and nobody taught you where yours was. You've been called kind, you've been called flexible, understanding, easy to get along with. Rarely has anyone stopped to ask what it costs, internally, to maintain that flexibility all the time, because flexibility isn't the absence of effort, it's the opposite. It's the ability to absorb strength without breaking, and that requires an energy that no one sees, because its very purpose is to remain invisible. There's a moment, in any structure like that, when the cables start to creak before any cracks appear. An almost imperceptible sound, a warning that only those very close can notice. You've heard that sound inside you more than once. That tiredness that didn't have a proper name. That urge to disappear for a moment, just to not have to hold anything for a few minutes. You called it stress, a bad phase, a difficult day, but maybe it was something else. Maybe it was a warning that you were carrying too much weight for too long alone. And yet, you remained standing. This didn't happen by chance, and it didn't happen because you had no choice. It happened because, somewhere inside you, there's a structure that was built almost unintentionally to withstand exactly this kind of pressure. Think about how many times you've been the point of equilibrium in a room full of unbalanced people. How many times has a conversation only avoided turning into a fight because you found, amidst the chaos, the exact word that relieved everyone's tension except your own? How many times have you held the thread of an unstable situation so that the people around you wouldn't even notice that there was a thread being held? This has a name, although nobody usually uses it. It's called structural resistance. And structural resistance isn't a free gift. It's continuous, silent work that most of us don't even recognize in our own bodies, in our own tiredness, in our own sudden desire to disappear for a weekend without explaining why. The question no one has asked you yet is, what happens when this structure, does it start creaking without anyone, not even you, noticing in time? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose doesn't talk about luck, nor does it promise that others will stop burdening you. It talks about a different mental attitude, Recognizing, like Libra, when you are distributing too much weight to maintain the peace of others and none to maintain your own. It's not about neglecting people. It's about learning to do so without becoming a structure of sacrifice. It's about finding real balance, not that superficial balance you've learned to fake so well that even you've convinced yourself. You're processing this now, perhaps feeling for the first time the weight of something that's always been there, but that you never had the exact words to name. This discomfort you're experiencing right now isn't accidental. It's the first sign that a part of you is asking for space to exist without having to support the entire world alone. This kind of recognition doesn't usually return in the same way after the narrative changes subject. Now, while the feeling is still alive, it's worth taking action. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Meanwhile, leave a comment below. When was the last time you held your composure in an entire situation without anyone noticing the effort it took? It creaks before any visible sign of cracking. That's the detail no one told you about yourself. Collapse never comes suddenly. It warns you. But in Libra, the warning usually comes disguised as small things. A sudden urge to cancel all appointments. An irritation that doesn't match your personality, a tiredness that doesn't go away, even after a good night's sleep. You've learned to interpret all of this as a personal failing, rarely as a system needing maintenance. Imagine a bridge that withstands all-day traffic year after year without anyone stopping to check the cables. It keeps functioning because it was well designed, but there's a limit between holding up well and holding up at the limit. You know this line intimately. You've been on both sides of it more times than you'd like to admit. And the strangest thing is that from the outside, nobody noticed the difference. Only you knew how much of that ordinary day was inside, on the verge of creaking. This doesn't make you fragile. It makes you someone who learned early on to operate under constant pressure without showing it. But there's a difference between operating under pressure for a moment and living permanently within it. And that's exactly where the first great test you've ever faced without knowing you were being tested lies. The test of realizing, before it's too late, that the creaking wasn't just a bad day. Think about how many times this warning has appeared disguised as something else. A sudden urge to cancel plans you yourself had taken the trouble to organize. Irritation over a small detail that, deep down, had nothing to do with the real reason for the discomfort. A silence you imposed on yourself, not because you had nothing to say, but because you no longer had the energy available to mediate another difficult conversation. These signs rarely come with a label. They disguise themselves as common tiredness, work stress, a passing bad phase, and perhaps some really are that. But there is a pattern, if you observe carefully, between the moments when this tiredness appears and the moments when you have just single-handedly held the balance of a situation involving several people at the same time. Engineers who design structures like this know something most of us ignore about ourselves. Constant monitoring is not a luxury, it's a necessity. A well-maintained bridge has sensors spread throughout its cables, measuring tension in real time, providing warnings long before any real risk of collapse. You, on the other hand, have learned to function without your own sensors. You've learned to notice the tension in others with almost supernatural precision, but you've rarely learned to apply that same attention to yourself. It's as if you installed the entire monitoring system on the outside, facing the world, and forgot to point a part of it inward. Recognizing your own limits before breaking down isn't weakness. It's the rarest skill among people who always take care of everything for everyone else. And that's precisely where the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose comes in differently. It doesn't teach you to endure more weight. It teaches you to recognize the exact moment when enduring has ceased to be strength and has become exhaustion. For those who carry so much for others, this kind of clarity usually arrives too late, or never arrives because no one stops long enough to look for it. This content may be taken down at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's something no one has told you about the kindness you offer so readily. Sometimes it's not weakness nor pure selfless goodness, it's camouflage. A protective coating over a steel structure, preventing rust from appearing on the outside while the metal continues doing the hard work on the inside. No one asks what lies beneath that layer because it's beautiful enough to convince everyone that no effort is involved. But it exists. And it's precisely beneath this camouflage that the most interesting secret about you lies. You rarely visibly collapse. Unlike other structures, which give way all at once under excessive pressure, you redistribute. You rearrange the weight between different areas of your life so that none of them experience total collapse. It's a brilliant system of emotional engineering. But every redistribution system has a cost, and the cost, in this case, is you. Each support point that receives a little more load slowly wears down, without fanfare, without a sound warning. Just a weariness that accumulates silently, year after year, while on the outside, everything continues to seem impeccably balanced. The question that remains is simple and uncomfortable. How long can we redistribute the weight without ever addressing the source that is generating all this overload? There's a type of breakdown that nobody films because it doesn't happen all at once, in front of everyone. It happens slowly, in small, almost imperceptible parts. A relationship that cools down not because there was a fight, but because one of the emotional support bridges simply stopped holding without dramatic warning. A project that loses steam, not because someone suddenly gave up, but because whoever was holding everything together behind the scenes gradually ran out of energy to keep holding it together. This type of slow breakdown is what Libra usually experiences, and it's also what Libra usually hides best, because on the outside, everything continues to seem functional until the very last possible moment. And there's an important difference between recognizing that you have the capacity to redistribute weight and assuming that you need to do it alone, always, without limit. The first is a rare talent. The second is a sentence that you yourself, without realizing it, have accepted to fulfill. No one forced you to do it with words. But the pattern has been established from being reinforced so much, from people saying so often, you always find a way, you always find the balance. With you around, everything works out. Phrases that seem like praise, but which, repeated for years, function almost like a silent sentence. Keep holding on, because that's what's expected of you. Addressing the source of overload is different from addressing the symptom, and it's precisely this distinction that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose helps you see, not as just another task to add to your list of responsibilities for others, but as a space that is solely yours, where the inner beauty of Libra ceases to be used merely to calm the surrounding environment and begins to serve you first. Those who constantly redistribute burdens rarely stop to think about themselves, and that's precisely why this type of content tends to disappear quickly, because few stop long enough to access it before it's too late. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's an engineering mistake that almost every living structure makes at least once, trying to turn into concrete. After feeling the cables creak so much, after redistributing weight on its own so much, there comes a point when the temptation is to stop swaying altogether, to become rigid, to close itself off so as not to feel any more oscillation, any more shaking, any more external pressure. It seems like protection. In practice, it's the opposite. Rigid structures are the ones that crack first when an earthquake hits. Flexible ones, those remain standing, swaying, precisely because they never stopped moving. You've probably tried being that hardened version of yourself at least once, shutting yourself off, stopping meditating, stopping feeling the weight of others, becoming a tougher person. And maybe you realized, without being able to explain exactly why, that this rigid version of you broke faster, hurt deeper, and never truly matched who you are. Because your strength was never in not swaying. It was in swaying, feeling the full weight of the wind against you and still standing. That's not luck. That's the hardest test of all, passed silently, every day, without applause, without anyone filming the exact moment you decided not to collapse. There's something disturbingly simple in this observation. The more you tried to be inflexible to prove you were strong, the closer you got to actually breaking. And the more you allowed the weight to pass through you, to move through you, without trying to rigidly block it, the more you remained whole. Astrology meets psychology precisely at this point. What has always been described as Libra's indecisiveness or emotional instability may, in fact, be the structural intelligence of a system that instinctively knows that resisting well is different from resisting hard. Think about how many times someone tried to convince you that you needed to take a firmer stance. Stop sitting on the fence. Decide once and for all. And think about how many of those times, if you had done exactly that, frozen up, hardened, refused to continue wavering between perspectives, you would have broken something important. A relationship, a negotiation, a delicate balance that only existed because you refused to treat it rigidly. The flexibility that others call weakness is often the only reason the whole structure is still standing. Claiming your own identity beyond the role of balancing others is perhaps the most difficult step of all for a Libra. And it is specifically about this that one of the most striking parts of the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose speaks: how to move away from the role of always solving, always calming, always organizing other people's chaos without ceasing to be kind, simply by stopping confusing kindness with self-absorption. This type of recognition changes how you relate to everything around you, and for that very reason, this content is not usually available for long. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There is a quiet beauty in bridges like this. They rarely appear on city postcards because of their brute strength. They appear because of the elegance of remaining standing after decades of wind, rain, and constant weight, without ever ceasing to move. No one takes a picture of the exact moment when a cable withstood yet another strong gust. But it is precisely in that instant, invisible and repeated thousands of times, that the bridge proves what it is. This is who you are. Not because someone decided this for you, and not because an external test determined that you should be strong in this specific way. This is who you are, because day after day, you chose to keep swaying instead of breaking, to keep feeling the weight instead of pretending it didn't exist, to keep standing even when no one noticed how much it cost. The toughest test of all was never a single event. An isolated trial, a decisive moment you needed to overcome all at once. It was made up of thousands of small moments of silent resistance scattered throughout your life. And you've already overcome practically all of them the right way, not by being rigid, not by turning to stone, but by remaining a living structure, able to feel the wind and still stand. Perhaps it's time to look back and acknowledge this, not as a spectacular feat, but for what it truly is, a rare and silent form of strength that most people will never understand, but that you carry in every balanced gesture you offer to the world, day after day. There's a difference between a statue and a bridge. A statue impresses with its immobility, its apparent solidity, the idea that nothing will ever make it crumble. But a statue serves no one but itself. It simply stands there, still, admired from afar. A bridge, on the other hand, exists to be crossed. It receives the weight of those who pass, absorbs the impact of each step, moves under every gust of wind, and yet continues to connect two sides that, without it, would never meet. No one takes photos of a bridge thinking about the invisible engineering that keeps it standing, but everyone who crosses it gets, in some way, closer to where they needed to be. You've been that bridge your whole life, for people who may never have realized how much that crossing has cost you. And if there's anything this moment can offer you, it's not the idea that you need to stop being that way. It's a silent invitation to remember that a bridge also needs maintenance, care, someone to check the cables before they tear too much. You've already passed the hardest test of all, and you passed it exactly the right way, swaying, feeling, yielding a little without ever collapsing. Now, perhaps, the next test is simpler and harder at the same time. Learning to take care of your own structure with the same dedication you've always dedicated to keeping the whole world standing around you.